Fiona Hill, the former senior director for Europe and Asia in the NSC, testified today in the impeachment investigation. And during her opening statement, she specifically talked about the importance of following through on US foreign policy, especially when it comes to Ukraine and protecting Ukraine and the United States from Russian aggression. So here is what she had to say about Russia and its involvement in US elections.
Based on questions and statements I've heard, some of you on this committee appear to believe that Russia and its security services did not conduct a campaign against our country, and that perhaps, somehow, for some reason, Ukraine did. This is a fictional narrative that has been perpetrated and propagated by the Russian security services themselves. The unfortunate truth is that Russia was the foreign power that systematically attacked our democratic institutions in 2016. This is the public conclusion of our intelligence agencies, confirmed in bipartisan congressional reports. It is beyond dispute, even if some of the underlying details must remain classified. The impact of the successful 2016 Russian campaign remains evident today. Our nation is being torn apart. Truth is questioned. Our highly professional and expert career foreign service is being undermined.
So what really stood out about her opening statement was the fact that she called out these Trump-Loyalists in the Republican Party who are trying to twist the narrative of Russia's involvement in our elections, but more importantly, Russia's involvement in further polarizing American voters, right? And so she's gonna get into even more detail on that in just a minute, but Cenk, go ahead.
Yeah, guys, as I'm watching these hearings, I don't know how many Americans are watching, how many are independents, and how much it affects them. But for any rational person watching them, the Republicans are doing enormous damage to themselves. They think that they're defending Trump and that they're defending their own party, but they look patently absurd. But okay, so one part is all their answers and questions are totally nonsensical. Like you almost can't believe that they're in the same room as the other people.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like they have come from a different room where a different conversation is happening. But that's point one. Point two, though, is where the damage really begins. So they attack Lieutenant Colonel Windman. Their whole thing, shtick for Republicans for all these decades was, "Joe, military, we're the military guys. Those guys are weak. We're America's support troops," right? And here they are. They're like, the minute they gave it an opportunity for their own political purposes, they're trying to shred this guy who has a stellar record.
Right, 100%, yeah.
So then I kept thinking, if I'm a military guy watching this, even if I'm a Republican, I don't like the way this is going, right? Like I'm starting to think like, wait a minute, am I positive who the good guys are? Because I know that dude went into battle and a bomb went off under him, and so he had light injuries, etc. I get, but that dude is real. Okay, I've served with guys like that. And then on the other side, you got these guys saying, like, "Oh, why'd you dress like that?" I think like I believe in rationality at the end of the day, and I know it's been a tough couple of years for that point of view. But I think that even right-wing military guys, of course, there's a bunch of left-wing military guys too, and independents, etc. But even right-wing military guys, like, right?
I know, Cenk. Sorry to interrupt you, but John McCain, right? Jim Mattis. Like, how many military people has Trump thrown under the bus? So
I think the answer is too many.
Yeah.
I think that it's starting to pile up and we're getting to a tipping point.
Definitely.
Yeah, and now on this, she just said, you guys are Russian tools. Don't get, wade through the fun British accent and get to the conclusion. She's like, what the idea that Russia did not interfere in the elections and that Ukraine did is literally Russian propaganda. I'm from the security apparatus in this for our country, and all of us in the intelligence community agree that the Russians are planting that idea that is now coming out of the mouths of the Republican congressman. So she's like, look, you are doing Russian propaganda as we speak.
Yeah.
And look, I know that our intelligence folks haven't always gotten it right, and sometimes they say something's propaganda and it's not, and they do their own propaganda. I get all of that, right? But in this case, it's not unclear. It's really astoundingly clear. Almost everyone across the political spectrum agrees, except now The Republicans are saying, no, the Russians aren't so bad. I kind of like their propaganda. I think their theory makes sense.
Yeah.
And there's no basis for the Ukrainians attacking us and interfering in our elections. That's just cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Look, I used to think that the only motivating factor for Republicans in defending Trump was the Trump's base. We're afraid of Trump's base. We need to defend him and protect him no matter what, because if we don't, the base is gonna retaliate against us. We'll get voted out of office. But we're also learning now that some of the Republicans who are in that room, including Devin Nunes, worked with people like Lev Parnas in investigating the Russia investigation, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm starting to think that some of these people have a conflict of interest and they shouldn't be part of these hearings to begin with. In fact, they might be investigated in the near future themselves.
So how much could Republicans be on the side of the Russians and against our own military and against our own intelligence before at some point the camel's back breaks and even their own base goes, man, this is really weird. This doesn't make any sense at all. I mean, imagine if Bernie Sanders was so enthusiastically defending the Russians and making up insane conspiracy theories about how they were right and our allies were wrong. I mean Republicans would lose their minds, let alone Democrats.
He hasn't even done that, and they've already made him out to be like some crazy Soviet era communist who's gonna come and get everyone.
Yeah, so they're now attacking all of the talking points they've been doing themselves for decades. We're the pro-military guys, we're the anti-Russia, strong American interest guys. And they're pulverizing their own marketing, basically, that they built up over all these decades, right in front of our own eyes.
So let's go to the next part of her testimony. This is where she sheds even more light on the political motivations of the Russian government.
US support for Ukraine, which continues to face armed Russian aggression, has been politicized. The Russian government's goal is to weaken our country, to diminish America's global role, and to neutralize a perceived US threat to Russian interests. President Putin and the Russian security services aim to counter US foreign policy objectives in Europe, including in Ukraine, where Moscow wishes to reassert political and economic dominance. I say this not as an alarmist, but as a realist. I do not think long-term conflict with Russia is either desirable or inevitable. I continue to believe that we need to seek ways of stabilizing our relationship with Moscow, even as we counter their efforts to harm us. Right now, Russia's security services and their proxies have geared up to repeat their interference in the 2020 election. We are running out of time to stop them. In the course of this investigation, I would ask that you please not promote politically driven falsehoods that so clearly advance Russian interests.
So I like the way that she laid that out, because she's making it clear that there's no interest in having a long-term conflict with Russia. But with what Russia is doing now, there needs to be a concerted effort by the US government to mitigate the damage they're trying to do to the United States and to our elections. But obviously, Donald Trump has completely minimized the impact of Russian meddling in US elections. But more importantly, he's believed nonsense conspiracy theories about how it's really Ukraine that's meddled in our elections, and there's no evidence of that whatsoever.
Look, man, right now she's saying this is not just about the past. The Russians are trying to do it again, interfere in our elections right now. And so I know there's some certainly on the right, and I suppose some on the left who are like, no, the Russians would never interfere in our elections. I'm not sure there is anybody on the left who thinks that. I think that there are people on the left who are worried that it's gonna lead to hostilities. That's legitimate concern, and we don't want any hostilities, okay? But it's real. The intelligence community is not making it up. We have told you on this show many times when they are making it up. We're the first ones to challenge them, right? And go, hey, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't jive with the facts that we know in public. This does, they are. And so what the Republicans are doing is now not just Trump anymore. It's all those folks in Congress. She's saying you are aiding and abetting the Russians interfering in our elections by putting up these crazy conspiracy theories that it's actually the Ukrainians and that we shouldn't be concerned about the Russians. So, and maybe that is what the Republicans are doing. Now, this sounds crazy, but they're gonna get clobbered in the elections if the polling is anywhere near correct. I know people get, so skeptical about polling. No, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but it's real. They're deeply unpopular. Trump is deeply unpopular. The Republican senators that are up for re-election and the congressmen are deeply unpopular. They weren't always, but they are today. So maybe I've gotten to a point where I think maybe they think, I don't know, the only way we could win is if the Russians come and help us. This is the insanity that's happening in this country right now. That is a top intelligence official saying, hey, over here, guys, it's happening right now. And these puppets are repeating Russian talking points. And then Fox News goes, yeah, Russia's awesome. I don't know what they're talking about. It's probably Ukraine, our allies' fault. It's our allies. Attack our allies, but make sure you don't touch Russia. So that's what the Republican Party's turned into, and it's pathetic. Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.